Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Peter Giovannis. I'm founder and CEO of Juris Tech Advisors. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jonathan Cocek. He is the Global Vice President of Analytics at Transmission Agency. And tell me right now, understanding you're no longer at the casinos, you're now working at Transmission. Can you give us a quick background of what you're doing there and what type of team have you built around analytics?
Yeah. So, here as the global vice president of transmission, before I kind of dive into what we're doing in the team, I just want to provide a little bit about what my prior industry has led up, my experience has led up to this experience here. Starting off in casino, I evolved into Epsilon, where I was part of their analytics team servicing across, many different industries. And what really excited me of working through that is what I've come to find out across business is that they really try to do all the same thing. It's really trying to create experiences that establish brand loyalty. And so when I started off in analytics, I started off in casino finance. And what I learned early on is that, analytics really touches every part of the organization, whether it's finance, operations, HR, marketing, sales. They all require a different level of analytical depth. And so, over the course of my career, analytics really evolved from our reactive reporting to establishing more reliable predictions, where data provides the foundation for storytelling, and ultimately it drives executive action. And I can also see that occurring within AI today in its evolution. And so, in other words, advanced analytics serves as the central nervous system for business transformation. And so, yeah,
Oh, I was going to say, in your role today, is that part of your process and part of your team building is trying to build a team that can basically serve all these business functions as well?
yeah. So whenever I started off at Transmission, they brought me on and they really wanted to automate across all regions. And so, you know, when I first was brought on, omni-channel reporting really appeared to be really fragmented and time to insight appeared to lag. And so our clients, they're large tech clients. And so they demand speed, agility, and innovation. And so I identified three critical transformation opportunities here. First was architecting ETL pipelines without custom API development. When you're the only analytics person on staff, you have to become really creative and how you advance, your clients along the analytic maturity curve. Secondly, I achieved unified customer intelligence through strategic first and third party data partnerships that address customer pain points. And so really listening to our customers. And thirdly, I knew that we needed to deploy predictive models that would help to differentiate our market positioning. And so I systematically just built regional relationships. I work in a remote environment. So waking up early, speaking to the folks in APAC region, trying to connect earlier on with our EMEA partners, that was really key to the success. And then really just trying to identify specific revenue drivers that drove the business forward. And so essentially what I did do was leverage open source technologies and assemble a team with a combination of three specific areas: media and AEM expertise with storytelling capabilities, ETL mastery, and accommodation and machine learning capabilities. And so if you can get two of the three, you can develop that team and then really build out a robust analytics function. And so that was my goal, was to create a centralized intelligence function. And so I was able to architect one central data science team that could service every time zone. And then this way, those would allow us to have continuous coverage with the same principles everywhere. The key really was getting people to amplify each other's strengths instead of competing with each other. And through this entire process, what it also did, my finance background also, it really resonated with me whenever I was working with our CFO, is that sometimes there's budget constraints within the organization. And so what this helped me do is really strip away anything that wasn't really revenue driving or improving our workflows within the organization. And that forced clarity really on what mattered and strip away some of the tools that were not necessary within our organization.
And just on the topic of revenue and kind of costs for your clients, it's kind of been the old adage in analytics is by building something like a customer churn model or the ability to upsell or cross sell different products and having those models available to your clients, are they seeing an ROI? And does that also help kind of this perpetual cycle of being able to work with you as that your projects, your analytics, your models are creating value, creating revenue, bottom line revenue. And as a sense, it's almost as though it's funding your analytical work.
Absolutely. I look at analytics as a, revenue driver as opposed to an impeding cost on the organization. And look, I know that every company that I engage with, they're along a different analytics maturity curve. Some are very advanced versus not, right? And what do I mean by that? So I know that analytics maturity directly correlates with a competitive advantage and market resilience. And so typically during a new client engagement, I try to identify where they're at, what are their pain points? And so I really do just listen to our stakeholders and those pain points and ask specific questions to help them understand a little bit about their business. What is your attribution modeling perspective? What is your CAC to LTV ratios across regions? I would say that in order to get to LTV, you would have to get to customer churn first. And so that gets me a really understanding of kind of where they're at along that maturity curve. And so this allows me to really just understand their operational maturity. And then really what I mean by analytics maturity is it's a reference to moving a business away from rules-based methodologies to more sophistication, which has machine learning and AI entrenched. And this is a way to achieve that ROI that you're talking about. And so in order to do that, I really just present them a roadmap at the onset of our relationship to essentially try to understand where they're at, but then also to continue to build trust and offer solutions to advance their maturity at a quicker rate. And it's my ability and my responsibility to do that at a lower cost than they could do potentially on their own or relative to what the competitors can do and easily replicate.
And as we're talking about data, I'd be interested to know, what have you chosen as a data platform, and what was it kind of the rationale or decision for you to choose that?
Yeah, we use a number of different tech within our organization. One of them is Snowflake as a main data platform. It's not the only one, depending on the client, it's a different need. What's interesting about the Snowflake, why we chose that one is, I knew we needed to use a Snowflake platform when clients became coming us to for real-time CRM insights relative to the activation strategies. When we identify the different tools that we have to leverage to answer client problems, I knew that existing tech stack that we currently had whenever it was brought on board, fragmented tools, and some of that stuff requires big data processing. So I knew that Excel and Python libraries couldn't really scale to enterprise requirements. And so, Snowflake really had a transparent pricing model. It was easily for our finance team to understand and to govern. And then history really has taught me that these integrated systems that you use help deliver the superior outcomes that you're looking for your clients. And so, Snowflake is one of those that remains an anchor for our ML and AI strategy. It powers our automated pipelines. We do leverage AWS for storage, S3. We like Snowflake's capabilities to develop stovepipes and those automated pipelines. Our team consistently leverages Python and its libraries and just a multitude of other AI tools.
Yeah, I'm curious too, any insights around just managing overall these cloud costs for you? That's usually a challenge that a lot of your peers face.
Yeah, looks, I live in a world of time and money, right? And here's a simple example is in order to manage those costs, when clients provide multiple data feeds, I systematically test the highest impact sources that they provide, and that helps me project annual compute requirements and optimize margins through resource modeling for cost control within the warehouse. And so we found through various tests that efficient resource allocation freed up more than 30% of our budget for innovation. And so really kind of diving in, identifying what works versus not, optimizing your queries for compute costs is really key to that. And then we just developed some quarterly optimization reviews to ensure cost structure supports our aggressive growth while just maintaining the operational excellence within transmission.
Jonathan, thank you very much for joining me today. For more interviews and insights, please visit CDO Magazine Tech.
Thank you, Peter.